Hi, folks. My name is Rachel Young Sato. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the former career development and program manager. And I'm here to talk with the Capstone class about the job search and preparation before graduation. I know a lot of folks right now are probably in that application stage, or you're realizing that graduation is coming up really quickly and you are unsure of maybe where to start, or it all feels so overwhelming. You just need some time to process. So I'm here to talk a little bit about that and some ways that we can talk about preparation. So I'm going to talk about a little bit of framing, preparation, some action tips, and some resources. So first off, what I like to share is that career development is not just about skills building. I know that a lot of folks tend to think, okay, it's about resume reviewing, cover letters, interview prep. But it is just as much about those tangible pieces and building those things as it is about reflection. Because in order to help make your decisions in this process, in the event that something happens, a layoff happens, your linear plan is no longer as linear as you thought it was. The world is constantly changing. Being able to do some reflection about your values, about what matters to you, helps you kind of go back to center and ground you in the ability to help you make those decisions moving forward. So, reflection is just as important as skills building. So, a couple things that I like to talk about that help you make those decisions is talking about integrating your internal and external worlds. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this decision-making model called the case-if model. First off, integrating your internal and external worlds. So your internal world, your values. What do you value? You might have heard Grant Bloom talk about values before if you've taken a class with him. Reviewing what are the things that matter to you. So if justice matters to you, if family matters to you, security, thinking about sustainability, if those are your values, that's your internal world. How do you want to act on those values? Your external world. So, an example that I have here is maybe I believe in supporting marginalized populations, specifically in policy making. So being able to put those into words helps you be able to figure out, okay, what does that mean for my job search? Maybe it doesn't mean that I'm only looking for a specific job title, like I must find something called environmental policy analyst. But if you care about something, if that is a value of yours, specifically in finding a job, how does that manifest externally? So maybe that manifests in I'm open to any position that allows me to support that effort. So I plan to apply to organizations with that in their mission or in my direct work. So maybe you are applying to a nonprofit that specifically supports BIPOC communities. Maybe you care a lot about sustainability, but maybe you're not able to find a specific job title or you don't yet quite have that experience to go directly into environmental policy. Maybe that sustainability is something that you suggest in your work as an administrative assistant. Maybe you are caring a lot about the mission of something, but maybe your title is budget analyst. So your values, how do they manifest in your work? There's lots of different ways that it can show up. It can be in the job title, it can be in the organization you choose. Maybe you are working in something that is has nothing to do with those particular things, but it's in the day-to-day choices that you make. If you care about sustainability, maybe you're volunteering somewhere. Maybe you are helping your office change the way that they deal with waste. There's a lot of ways to manifest your values that doesn't have to directly correlate to a job title. So, something that is also really helpful, kind of segueing from that, is this is a decision-making model, particularly from career development. So, it has to do with communication, analysis, synthesis, valuing, and execution. So there is a handout that I shared with your professors that you should be able to access if this screen is too small for you, but we're going to start with communication. Maybe that is, I know I need to make a choice. So I need to find a job. Graduation's coming up soon. Analysis, understanding myself and my options. Okay, so I'm going to sit with what do I care about? Right now, it's financial security. You have rent to pay once you graduate, and you might not have the ability to be so picky about the type of job that you have because you need to be able to pay for your bills. So, thinking about what are some things that you value. Maybe you're supporting family, maybe you are burnt out and you need to find something that has a little bit better balance. Understand yourself and your options. So, what are your options? And then looking at your options synthesis, expanding and narrowing. Okay, so here are my options, but this particular job doesn't allow me to work with people as much. So maybe that's not something I'll look for. Maybe I need a particular salary in order to pay my rent. Maybe you don't have the ability to move right now. So you're narrowing down your options. Valuing, choosing an occupation, program of study, or job. So kind of making that choice, okay, I'm going to apply to specifically local government. Um, I'm going to particularly apply to job titles that have community involvement, community engagement. Execution, implementing your choice. You make those applications. And then in the event, it doesn't work out, maybe you apply, you don't get it. You can go back around, you can go back to synthesis, you can go back to valuing. I think when we feel frozen and paralyzed with, okay, I need to make this huge life decision, it's a little bit difficult to figure out what steps to make. If that is you, then this model can help with that decision making. I'm going to talk about preparation. So, preparation, there's lots of different ways. Like I mentioned, there's the skills building and reflection. So, starting with core values. What matters to you? Consider what those things are. What are your non-negotiables? So, like I mentioned before, location, pay, work culture, politics. So, maybe you really, really need something that is hybrid. Maybe you have kids, and so you need to have the ability to have some flexibility with caring for them. Maybe you, like I mentioned before, you really need those benefits. You need insurance to help care for your health. And then the step that everyone thinks about, which is materials. Refresh your resume, cover letter, LinkedIn, practice those interview questions. If you do choose to use AI or some sort of ChatGPT function, make sure that when you are using those, that you are trying to aim to use it more as a thought partner more than just having it write something out for you. And so I say this right now because this is a big time for ChatGPT, Copilot, Claude, all these different types of models. And hiring managers can actually tell oftentimes if you are using it, and sometimes they might discard those applications, and sometimes they are okay with it as long as you are showing that it is your voice. So, my huge recommendation is that if you are using that for any of these materials, that you are making sure that it sounds like a person, it doesn't sound overly formal, and I think it is potentially a good way to help with interview questions. Upload that job description, say, what are some questions that might be asked in this interview, and practice that yourself. So, cover letter, resume, LinkedIn. There are also some resources on the Evans Community Hub SharePoint that you can be able to find if you need some support. And then an application plan. This can be helpful instead of just mass applying and then just forgetting about it, or you are looking up all of these jobs and then, you have to run a class. Make a spreadsheet, create a plan, write down those deadlines, but also knowing that life is really difficult right now. You're in a time period when you are prepping for graduation, you're finishing up your capstone. And so understanding that you're human give yourself some hard and soft deadlines. Those can be really helpful. And don't be too hard on yourself if you can't meet them all. The job application process, quite honestly, is kind of really difficult. And so, if you can acknowledge that and understand rejection is a part of the process, and it's just something that we have to get through, and everyone is experiencing, know that this is a marathon rather than a sprint. So, pace yourself. If you can't get all those applications in, that's okay. And then in knowing that this is a really difficult process, something that people often don't consider is how important a support system is in this because it's a long game. So rejections happen. Um, Imagining yourself in that position and then suddenly it gets pulled under the rug or funding changes. It is something that everyone is going through. You're not alone in this process. It is not about you and who you are. It is the job market, it is the application process. And so finding people that are in your corner, sometimes we like to call this your advisory board or your board of directors. If this is a peer, if this is a professor, mentor, find people that are in your corner that you can go back to and remind you who you are, what you're good at. And sometimes we just need that encouragement. So, create that group chat, talk to your peers, celebrate your friends, and also just, pace yourself and remind yourself that it is a part of the process and have those people in your corner that are willing to remind you of that. So this is an estimated application timeline. I will say that I haven't found this to be as accurate nowadays, but this is a good place to start if you are curious about the timeline. I will say that I think government work and where we are right now in the world, this tends to take significantly longer. And sometimes you don't get a response until a couple months later after the process has been completed. So previously, maybe before this past year, an estimated application timeline might be within a month or so or 2 months. Um, but I will say it depends. It depends on the organization, depends on how fast they can go. Know that oftentimes they have to go through multiple people, get multiple permissions and acceptances. So, this is an estimated timeline. Maybe something is listed, a job position is listed, and maybe it closes within 2 weeks or a month. Um, they most likely won't be able to reach out to you until the job posting is closed. And potentially the first step is a phone screening. This might be 15 minutes or 30 minutes. They ask some basic questions. And then an interview. Nowadays, this tends to be over Zoom because that makes it easier for folks. So the interview might be some basic questions with an HR person and potentially the supervisor. There's a possibility that your second interview will have multiple people. Maybe it's a panel, maybe it is um, people that you will work with on your team or some people from other departments. And then oftentimes the reference checks don't happen until they are pretty serious about you as a finalist, and they'll make those calls and check in with your references. And then sometimes they give you a soft offer, and then you can potentially negotiate it and then have that official offer. And sometimes you can negotiate when your start date is. So again, this is maybe not the most common right now. I think this changes a lot depending on the state of the world and the state of the job market. But if you're curious about when to apply, working backwards is helpful. And internships, like you probably had experienced in your first year, tend to open in winter and spring. If you're looking for a job and you want to start at a specific time, I think working backwards from when you want to have that start date. So if you are in Capstone right now, if this is your second quarter, I think this is a great time to start applying. If you are in your first quarter, I think this is a great time to have those networking conversations, informational interviews, do some exploring, and really narrowing down your options. Keeping track of your applications, like I mentioned before, a quick spreadsheet. This is an example. So maybe it's position title, organization. Are you in progress? Have you started, or did you just find it and you stuck a link in there? Do you have any connections? Did you submit your references and deadlines? So maybe you did a similar thing when you were applying to grad school or to undergrad, but this is a great way to keep track of it because sometimes you apply to so many. And then talking about action. So, like I just mentioned, networking is a huge thing, and a lot of jobs are acquired through networking, through word of mouth. And sometimes it is because you had a conversation with an alumni, they remembered you, and you said, like, hey, if there's a position that pops up, could you keep me in mind and share that with me? Then they can share the posting with you, hopefully. And I think having conversations with, say, you go to a panel, you go to a lecture with a guest speaker, go up and talk to them afterwards. If you're interested in their work, if you really admire something that they shared, go and talk to them, have a conversation. You can even just say, I really love what you said here. Or, hi, I'm an Evans student in the MPA program, and I'm interested in your work. Do you have any advice for me or where to start? Or do you know of anywhere I can apply? I would suggest try not to go straight out of the gate saying, I need a job. Do you have any jobs? Just have a conversation like they're a person. Think of it as they are another peer in the profession, or if they're willing to even kind of have a mentor type of role in your life. Um, Go to events, go to those career fairs that are across campus, that are, go to lectures in different departments that are really interesting to you. And it doesn't even have to be within UW. You can find events that are in the community, have those conversations with them. If you apply to a job and you see that they have an event somewhere, go to that event, tell them you applied, have a conversation about it. I know that there currently are ways that organizations are trying to be a little bit more equitable, so they might not take um, informational interviews or have calls with hiring managers with those that have applied in order to try to keep it a more equitable playing field. So I would say just try. Maybe you send a cold message on LinkedIn to an alumni. Maybe you have an organization you're interested in and ask to talk to someone. Use the fact that you're a current student. Say that you're an Evans student, especially because the name does go far, and just have a conversation. Start there. And the worst that can happen is that they just don't answer you. So send a couple of messages and see who replies. Research. Don't just look at job boards. So while Handshake and LinkedIn can be helpful, I would consider them kind of third party posting places. So if you are interested in particular agencies and organizations, get submerged in that world. So maybe you're following them on whatever social media you use, if it is LinkedIn, if it is Instagram, keep up to date on that news and that information. They tend to post positions and opportunities, and then you get to kind of see what they're constantly talking about and get familiar with what are the topics that are common in that industry, in that world. Particular organizations that you're interested in, I would go to their webpage, and if they have a email that you can sign up for their job postings, I really recommend doing that so that you can get job notifications directly sent to your email. Job boards can be helpful for seeing what's out there, but if you're going to apply, I recommend looking up the organization itself, just in case those job boards are out of date. And then getting involved. I know that investing in your career can seem like you have to find particularly the full-time job that meets all of those dreams and goals and values that you have. But if you need to find a job directly after graduation that just covers the bills, that doesn't mean that you are stunted in your career. go find something to be involved in. If it is a committee, an advisory board, there's often types of boards that you can be involved in your local government that is just kind of a regular person and they have openings once in a while. You can volunteer, you can mentor, you can stay involved in the conversation still, even if it's not your full-time job. So, you can also see within your job if there are opportunities for you to be involved in the things that you really do care about. So if you have a title that isn't involved in particularly environmental policy or budgeting, I recommend talking to your supervisor or looking within your organization. Are there groups you can be involved in? Are there affinity groups or committees that are already in the job that you have where you can get that experience? Or talk to your supervisor saying, I would really love to grow in this area. Is there any way that I can be involved in those meetings or those conversations? And then you can get that experience without having to go find a new job. Some job searching tips. Some of these I already mentioned. Turn on job notifications. Go to that actual site for government jobs. It's quite literally governmentjobs.com or .gov. Turn on those job notifications. Filter out those things that you're interested in, and it can send directly to your email when those jobs are posted. Because, particularly, especially if it's a government job, then it might close early. And it's important that you are ready and you have your materials ready so that you can send in those applications once they pop up. I will make a note that if it is on government jobs, keep your profile up to date. That's a little bit different than the materials you submit. So when you make a profile, make sure that you are constantly updating your resume because it has been shared with me for those that are hiring that they look through the system first and they see that first. So even if you're updating and changing your resume in that particular document you submit, make sure your profile is up to date with that information as well. Connect with your former network. So maybe you were working somewhere before you came to Evans. Connect with them, tell them what you're looking for, and continue to build your current network. The people around you right now, your peers, your classmates, your faculty, the people at University of Washington, this is your network. Cultivate those relationships, build those relationships. Don't just see it as a transactional thing. And as you connect with your former network, have a conversation. Don't just say, hey, I'm looking for a job. Maybe you're close enough that you can do that. But if you haven't talked to them in a long time, have a phone call. Have it like keep that relationship up to date once in a while and have a conversation that is normal and not just transactional, and then share with them what you're looking for. Don't rule out temporary or part-time work. I know that we really want that security to have a full-time job that we know will continue on, particularly if it's a contract, a temporary contract that's a year. First off, that gives you some time in case you decide that's not for you, but it can also be continued on as a full-time role and can be a stepping stone into something different. Part-time work as well. So if you need to hold multiple jobs at the time, or if you are in a financial space where you can do a part-time role, that can be a stepping stone into a field as well. And then I also said that following organizations of interest on social media and LinkedIn, they post opportunities all the time. They're also really funny if you follow some of them, especially WS. If you don't follow them right now, I suggest it. It's a good time. And you get to see when I-5 is going to be really busy. So following those helps you kind of get submerged in that world, in that industry. So talking about your resume, I think this is the question to have. Right now, I know that I have on here that the federal resumes don't have a page limit. That was the previous formatting. Right now, where we're at, the federal government actually recommends 2 pages. So I want to say that for any resume you make, the sweet spot is 2 pages, unless you're applying to the private sector. If it's a private sector, I would stick to 1 page and be pretty concise. Everything else that you might apply to, I would say stay to 2 pages. And the big thing to change on there is to make sure you have a summary at the very top. So, right underneath your name and your contact information, and before you have your education section or your relevant experience, have a summary at the top. So your summary will be about 3 bullet points or sentences, and this will be a little bit about your expertise, what you care about, what you have experience in. Maybe it sounds like detail-oriented leader with 5+ years of experience in project management, policy analysis, and data analysis. And then maybe you go into that you are making a career transition into the public sector from nonprofit. You'll want to tailor your resume per job. I know that can sound really tedious, so maybe you make a category. Maybe you have a community engagement resume, maybe you have a finance resume, and maybe you have a policy analysis resume. And then when you are applying to those jobs, you just are tweaking a few things. And those things that you are wanting to change and adapt and tailor are those keywords. So when you see a job description and it has repeating words or words that you also see in the qualifications, or you're seeing it also in all these other job postings, you want those exact words in your resume. So if it is a job that is looking for budget analysis and program evaluation, use that exact term in your resume as long as it applies. And then add that also in your skills section. And I think it's common that folks think, oh, I only should put my white collar jobs, or I should not have my internships or food service work on my resume. It's been shared with me, particularly from City of Seattle, that they do want to see those things. They see the investment that you have in your community. They see that you have a career trajectory and you can do customer service. You probably have worked in really fast-paced, really intense environments. So don't shy away from adding that. You can add that in a separate section. It doesn't have to be in your experience section. You can make a separate section called additional involvements. And by bullet point, just add cashier, Fred Meyer, 2023. And you can kind of just mark the fact that you had that experience, but it doesn't have to be an entire section in your resume. So 2 pages is a sweet spot. 1 page for private sector. Federal government is a 2 page limit now. Something that's really important, especially for those of you, because you're in your capstone class right now, is adding your capstone on your resume. And you'll list it as consultant. So here's a couple of options of how to format it. You can say graduate consultant, you can say consultant, and you'll put your client as the employer. So this is a really good opportunity for you to use a big name, well known within Washington, and to add that experience on your resume. Key things about your capstone is that it was 6 months professional experience. You had consulting experience, project management, you worked in a team dynamic with real world clients, and you did quite a bit of research and analysis and presentation. So those are some things that you can add in your description. Some interview tips, really quickly, is some questions that you might get. The most common ones I'll say are behavioral questions. So they'll say, tell me about a time. Tell me about a time when you had a conflict on your team and how did you resolve it? Tell us about a time when you led a project. How did it go and what was the result? Maybe they're asking you about your subject matter expertise and skills. Oftentimes, this is very technical roles, so maybe closer to engineering or closer to um, finance. Some personal and career questions. So, how does this fit into your career? Tell us about yourself. How would you describe your role in a team or your supervision style? And then maybe they'll ask a DEI question or something particular to their work culture, and so they can get a deeper understanding. So when they ask those types of questions, you're going to want to go into a deeper level rather than saying, I care about DEI or equity is important. Share about why. Share an experience of how you have that understanding. When you're sharing stories, maybe you might not have a professional experience in that field or that particular question they have. So, first option is to share that professional experience. But if you don't have that experience, you can share an academic example or a hypothetical. So maybe you're trying to get into budget analysis, but you haven't yet had a role that has that in their title or their professional experience. Talk about something that you did in class, or saying, you know, I had this project within my class, and this is what I would do in this instance if I worked for your organization. Or maybe saying, I saw my supervisor go through this issue, and this is how I maybe would have done things different. When you are doing and talking about through behavioral questions, you're going to want to use the STAR method, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But frame things from a strength-based way rather than I'm really bad at this or I'm weak in or I've never done this. Say, I'm growing in this. I have experience in this while I might not have experience in this. And I think a great place for you to shine that a lot of folks forget about is that you can ask questions. You can ask questions at the end of your interview, and this is a place you can shine as well. I think it's a great place to ask really thought-provoking questions rather than just what comes next, when will I hear back? Maybe ask them, how would you describe the way your team dynamic works? Why are you in this work? What has been the most challenging on your team so far? Um, how are you all integrating work-life balance or wellness in your work? This is a great place to ask those questions as well and shows your values. So, like I mentioned, the STAR method, it stands for situation, task, action, and result. It's a great way for especially ramblers like myself to remind me how to stay on track with things. So, maybe you are talking about a time when you had a conflict on your team, and maybe this was you use a situation that was your capstone, or maybe it was an internship. So maybe your situation was you were asked to do something and you needed to work on this step. It was very hands off. Maybe you did not have a lot of context. And the task that you needed to get done was that you needed to complete this research or do this interview. Um, you're going to want to spend most of your time talking about what did you decide to do? I think it's easy to mostly talk about the context and the story behind the situation, but you're actually going to want to spend most of your time talking about what you did about it and then what was the result. And if the story is not maybe one where it ends well and you talk about your result, your preference is to talk about a story where something did end up well, but maybe the result is I learned that this isn't the best way to go about it. Or if I were to do this again, this is how I would change things. So the result doesn't always need to be 100% an amazing story, but if you're able to reflect on what you would change or what you would make better, it is still worth sharing that story. So some of these questions might be, tell me about a time when you had to handle multiple competing priorities, or you had to tackle a complex problem. So, reminding yourself of the STAR method, maybe you have a post-it note on your computer when you're doing that interview to remind yourself, I need to talk about the action and the result. This is a great way to help you formulate your answer. And then salary negotiation, I think this is a scary conversation for folks. And I just want to remind you that you can just try. Just try. And if this is new to you and you're nervous, you don't need to shoot for the stars necessarily. You don't need to ask for, a giant leap in the salary that you are being offered. I would say try Try a little bit above what you are being offered. And if that's not something that they are willing to do, maybe you can negotiate something else. Maybe it's a relocation stipend. Maybe you can negotiate telework, time off, being able to be involved in something else on your team. I'd say that government jobs might have a little less room for negotiation, but again, just try. You don't need to come across as overly cocky or overly confident. It is worth just asking. And research your industry standards so you can kind of see what is the average salary for this so you can know if you are being lowballed. Um, and take some time. Don't feel like you need to answer right away or the next day. I would ask when maybe they're hoping to get an answer by and take that time to sit with it, sleep on it, talk to some folks, talk to a mentor, take in that information, and then you can get back to them. You can do this over the phone, you can do this over Zoom, you can do this over email. Here's some examples of how you might write this out as an email. And I think if you are able to and you are willing to, it is always better to have the conversation where you can see their face and their body language. People respond differently when they can't see their face. So I think if you were able to, maybe the first email is, I would love to have a conversation about the role and the salary offer. And then you bring that up in the call rather than in the email. And I mentioned this before, AI and ChatGPT use. Um, Use it as a prompter tool. Use it as a thought partner. Don't let it do all the work for you. It can be a great way to see different ways that you can format things. It can be a great way to see how you can reword things. But I recommend not copying and pasting, making sure that your voice is still noticeable, that it is genuine, and this is probably goes without saying, but don't input any confidential information into ChatGPT. Um, it is used to inform other things, so know what you put in there might be used. Um, and I mentioned before, some applications are discounted if they can tell that you're using ChatGPT. So if you wouldn't talk like that normally, I would adapt some things. Be genuine, sound like a human, sound like yourself, and try to avoid having it do all of the work for you. Some prompt ideas maybe are what are some interview questions that might be asked? Maybe you input the job description and say, what are some keywords that I should include? And you can also see what types of organizations should I be looking for in the Seattle area. And then wrapping this up, some extra resources. The Career and Internship Center has a lot of really great resources. Like I mentioned before, there's also a career development page on the Evans Community Hub SharePoint. And there's some external resources. There's lots of different ways that you can process your career development. Some identity specific resources and associations. Like I mentioned, you can do your networking within an association. So if you get really involved in a group, they can help you out if you're looking for a reference to another job or kind of see what's out there. And this is wrapping up my conversation with you all. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope the best for you, and you got this. So keep up the good work and support each other.